This country been run by a brother goats, the greediest of all time. They have all a self and none of the mentality. The chorus is me. Bunch of pigs and goats running this desk, and the latest deception and betrayal is really cause for alarm. They're the greediest of all time. It is plain to see the true gang and give a damn about you and me. Even big supporters crying foul and shame at all these comrades dirtying the Labour Party name. Don't business about that as long as they pocket fat. Too bad who don't agree. The goat them say it's all about me. That's the chorus. Who is the nanny gate liar? Who don't spin doctor? Men. Whose sole agenda is to make themselves richer and the poor harder. They say I know that I greedy, but I beg you don't watch me stop being hateful. Instead just be grateful. All the good them say it's all about me. That's the slogan. The big salary increase is just the latest injustice to be imposed on the people by these blundering misfits. They're selfish and greedy with no love for the needy. Cabalicious and run race, make the thing ain't got no taste. Disrespectful and pompous, arrogant and self-righteous. These goats too brave and bold, ain't got no heart, no soul. They fed on their own nest, we not a care for the rest. They say it's all about me. That's the goat, them mantra. Who want the whole hog treating poor people like dog men? Who keep flying high and start living our sons here to die? Men. Who take the pepper, the pop and kill off the peace? Men. Enough talking about lift and elevate, just words and promises but no relief. Who lacking empathy, compassion, humility, me. Who think that shame, lame, rename is a sustainable strategy? Hear the goat, them men. But woe be unto these goats and vampires. For Ecclesiastes 5 verse 10 says, whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income. Firstly, no grievous evil under the sun. Wealth brought into the harm of its owners, lost to misfortune, so that their children have nothing to inherit. So let them carry on, God don't like ugly. Who playing, who fooling, who since June 2022, men. Who do the big bet and switch, divide the poor and the rich, men. Who raking in bigly while so many going hungry, men. Who are disgrace of behind blood sucking parasite, a bunch of termites. It brought them, men.
We love to serve our country that God has blessed so well. In peace and love and happiness, we will forever dwell. We ask for God's protection and guidance on our way. The People's Action Movement will strive from day to day. The People's Action Movement is here and here to stay.
Hello everyone and welcome to Perspectives. Of course, Perspectives is a program brought to you by the People's Action Movement, a party which on 15th January 1965 was formed here in St. Kitts and Nevis. Some brave young men, averaging around 29 years, took on the challenge to form a political party. And 60 years and 1 day later, the party is still alive, still flourishing, the party of the People's Action Movement. This evening, on the very first edition of season 2 rather, I have in the room with me 3 gentlemen who represent 3 of the 4 former political leaders of this great party. Between them, they have served 49 years in a leadership position of the People's Action Movement. I want to introduce you, ladies and gentlemen, to one of our esteemed founders of the party, Dr. the Right Honorable Sir Kennedy Simmons. I want to also introduce you to Mr. Lindsey Grant, a former political leader, and to Dr. Sean Richards, the immediate past political leader of the People's Action Movement. This evening, we are going to capture the essence of PAM, the story of PAM, the story that was initiated by the founder, Dr. William V. Herbert, who started this process in 1964. To begin with, I want to start with an excerpt that I'm going to read from our 50th anniversary magazine in 2015. And I'm quoting here from the Right Honorable Sir Kennedy A. Simmons. And he said then in this magazine, "Our first 15 years in opposition were difficult years. There were years in which we were tempered in the fire of victimization, injustice, ridicule, false imprisonment, intimidation, and violation of individual rights and freedoms." I want to start off, Sir Ken. I want you to characterize for me what made you come to this conclusion in those first 15 years of PAM. This would have been between 1965 and perhaps 1980. I want you to place into context this characterization that you gave here in our 50th anniversary magazine of the party.
Well, it didn't take 15 years for us to come, or 15 or 50, for us to come to those conclusions. As soon as a matter of fact, from the time before PAM started, the persons who were getting together to show signs of protest were faced with all of that you have written about. If you take my own personal situation, on that Sunday in which the electricity demonstration which preceded the formation of PAM took place, early in that day I wasn't even sure that I would attend. But eventually I decided to go and be part of it. And by the next morning, even though I had just returned, as you can see from the dates, from the university, and I was waiting the call to start to work as a medical officer, in my view, hopefully in Bastille. Another doctor and I, a doctor I think from Indonesia, arrived at the same time. You had 2 districts available. I was interested in Central Bastille. I don't know why at that time, but I was interested in Central Bastille. And I was waiting the call. I took part in the demonstration, just by chance today. And the only reason I was carrying the banner out front, like I was a leader, had that to do with the organization, was because my friend Richard Keynes was standing there with his banner. And while we were waiting, we were late. So while we were waiting, we got together chatting, and when the call came to start, I just hold one end and he hold the other end, and we went off down the road. By next morning, somebody called me from a government office asking me what I did to the then chief minister. So I didn't do anything. He said, well, he come in here like a mad bull this morning. Right? And he...
For those of us who may not recall, who was that chief minister at that time?
You notice I didn't say it.
No, but we want historical footnotes to this conversation.
Mr. Southwell.
Okay.
I was the chief minister at the time. And interestingly enough, Hesketh Benjamin, whom I think we all know, and I were the opening batsmen on his cricket team. Right? So we had for a relationship. But they decided next day just free up the money to employ the next person, and to this day I haven't heard a word. Nobody said, well, we're not taking you, or we're taking you. That was the end.
All because you were holding a banner?
All because I was holding the banner the day before. So it gives you a sense of what, you know. And this, some of the utterances which were made at the time, I mean, things like, they would destroy PAM. What was the term? Let me see. If I have the exact term. I don't want to make a mistake. Right? Right. Not that one, not me. Yes. This is the words of Dr. Howard at the time. The Labour administration tried desperately to destroy the party, root and branch, and harassed, victimized, detained and imprisoned most of the leadership. The party emerged stronger than ever. And that was the response.
It almost seemed to me that somebody somewhere was saying the audacity of these young men.
Oh yes, that was the attitude, because the context, at that time, I mean, any person, individual or group which had come up, usually around election time, a group would get together and go and contest an election. And by the time the election was done and they had been subjected to the ridicule, it was all over. They disappeared from the political scene, right? Everybody went back to normal. And, you know, Mr. Bradshaw was famous for making up some things to ridicule, whether a little song or a little ditty to ridicule the people who came up. I remember one year there was a candidate by Mr. Christmas, and he said, well, nobody want Christmas in November. The election was November. So, right? With us, if I could sing, I would sing it for you. The little ditty which was used to ridicule at that time. The Billy may jump and prance, but pay him no mind. But Simmons may walk and whine, but leave him behind. Keynes may grin, Powell may sing, leave them far and vote for Labour.
Okay.
Right. Ridicule. Right? But the other side of the coin is that people wanted change. A change in attitude. We're coming off the sugar industry, and we've gone through all this thing. Sugar is dying. And where do we go next? And it was clear that there was no path forward. And the same old thing, you're getting 3 cents or X% to be added. People used to make fun of it, in a sense. They come and they say, well, we got 5 cents, 5%. And after a while, people were saying, people were getting 5 cents on their salary, that sort of thing. And people wanted something new. The unemployment for young people was hard to come by. And then there's a victimization, the injustice, you can't raise your head to say anything. And especially the young people. And the young people really flocked to PAM. Problem was, right, they could not vote.
So I'm hearing you saying that PAM really, at that time, was standing in the gap for social justice, for the working class.
Yeah. Well, this is that's the point. You would say that looking at the history of the labor movement worldwide and even Caribbean-wide, they are supposed to be the ones who are looking for the working class people. But it's the People's Action Movement, really and truly, who have implanted into the whole fiber of the country, into the structure of the country, the various things to improve the quality of not just the standard of life, but the quality of life for working class people in this country. I mean, if you could start to reel things off your fingers. Huh?
Absolutely, I agree. Let me just let you have catch your thoughts now and segue a little bit to Mr. Grant. Because I'm sure Mr. Grant perhaps would have been fully aware of that history. And yet he himself now, 35 years old, fresh from university, this book says recently married with young children, still went and saw he had in the ring.
He had to.
In 2000. Mr. Grant, how brave were you then, knowing the kind of torture that happened to your predecessors in this political party? How brave were you then to say, I'm in?
Well, Madam Chair, in retrospect, I think I must have been a madman. In retrospect. But I saw the party I loved from since a teenager. The gap needed to be filled. We had Sir Ken, who had just then retired, and there appeared to be a gap, and somebody needed to step up to the plate. I was very young then. I think I was just, well, at that time I was 35, but I had already been into the party, been the secretary, the chairperson of the party. And at 35, I had to make, I think, the most difficult decision in my life, because at that time I just started a law firm. I was very young in it. I had a young wife, 2 young kids, and I know how the politics is. You get consumed by it. And when you get consumed by the politics, your family suffers. And I really didn't want them to suffer as a consequence of my decision. But it's a decision that I had to take, and it's a decision I really don't regret at the end of the day. And so I went full blast into that. I think it was October the 8th, 2000, and at that time, the Labour Party was almighty and powerful. All the seats they had, we had about 35% popular support. So it was a real daunting experience. But when I look back at the experiences, I had a young team behind me, and I think we did a lot to garner the support, the energy, the vibrancy of the People's Action Movement between 2000 and beyond. So, when we look back, I think we would have done a magnificent job. We started off with nothing in 2004 general elections. We had Dr. Sean Richards winning the Sandy Point seat. We expected to win Keon at that time. I think we fell short in 2010 at the next election. We captured the Keon. And by the time I demitted office in 2012, I think it was, we were well. And I said PAM was well on the way to winning the next general elections. The rest is history, as you would recognize.
Yeah. And Dr. Richards, I want to ask you, where were you when PAM was formed? Don't answer, because I know the answer to that question. But again, like I posed to Mr. Grant, when you understand the history of the party, and yes, by the time you came on the scene, there was a major evolution. PAM had been in office for 15 years, and all of the foundational work, and I'm going to swing back to Sir Ken in a minute to talk about, were already in place. But yet, by the time you came on the scene, the party was out of government. And I don't think it could be easy for any political leader to want to lead a party in opposition. What were your thoughts even then in 2012 when Mr. Grant handed the baton to you?
In 2012, when I took over the leadership of the party, Certainly we were still in the political wilderness. As indicated by Mr. Grant, I had picked up the Sandy Point seat in 2004. In 2010, Eugene Hamilton picked up constituency number 8. Interestingly, when I ran for the leadership of the party, both Eugene and I were the 2 deputy political leaders, and both of us would have contested the leadership position. That election ended in a tie, and the chairman for the party, Selwyn Liebert, had to cast the vote that would break that tie. That vote was casted in my favor, and so I became the political leader then in 2012. Of course, I had 8 years by that time in terms of the politics and being a candidate. Lindsay had done a very good job in terms of taking the party to the next level, and so for me, it was now to catapult the party into government, which we were able to successfully do by the elections of 2015.
Dr. Simmons, you're looking at these 2 gentlemen who, in some ways, were your successors. And I'm sure in your mind you're saying, you know, they probably had it a little easier than you and Dr. Herbert did. So I want us to dial back a little bit more to those formative years of PAM and tell us about that day when Dr. Herbert had that meeting in his courtyard in his law office on Church Street. I want you to give me a sense of some of the people who were there, and then about the eventual signing of the document that brought PAM to life.
Well, I've been thinking about that very question, and I can tell you straight off, right, that I cannot conclusively remember all, not all, but even remember some of the people there. Interestingly enough, several of those who were there, if not all, several, if not all, are listed on the board
at party headquarters.
At party headquarters as having deceased. But I can tell you one very prominent person that I have always recalled, because where I was positioned at the very back of the room, back against the wall. Right?
You were hiding?
Because I was kind of hiding. And I was there out of curiosity. And you know, I didn't want to sort of get in too much of what's going on. But I remember seeing Mr. Farrier, Calvin Farrier. He was one of the people who was there. And obviously Dr. Herbert was there.
Yes.
And Mr. Courtney Dickinson. Some of these people have gone to the great beyond.
Yes.
But I still remember that day. And as I looked at him in particular, and other civil servants, can't remember. Remember Mr. Oliver Glassford was there. He was then working the Lee Walwyn. Right? He's passed on as well. And I thought to myself, Mr. Farrier is a very intelligent man. I mean, he would be a good person to be, you know, not necessarily a leader, but be a leader within the thing. And then I realized, boy, if he ever raised his head at that time like that, being in the civil service, he's sure to get it lopped off.
Wow.
I remember those thoughts. And I said, there will be others, as I looked around in that room, who have come to the meeting, they've gone that far, but now it comes to the time to get out there, they can't raise their head.
Yes.
I said, well, boy, after my name was called, I was not offering anything, but somebody mentioned my name, right, to be secretary or something. And in that moment, I had to think, am I going to say take it or decline?
Yes.
And I took too long to decide to decline. Let's put it that way. And as a result, my name went up unopposed. Yeah. And the thing that influenced me not to decline was because I could see in that room persons who certainly I believe could do a good job, but they dare not in those days,
Yes.
and in that context, raise their heads. He'll get lopped off. Right? Mine had started to be lopped off, but I didn't mind somehow. Young, brash, you know, not a lot of other responsibility at that time. Figure what they can't do me nothing sort of thing, attitude. Right? But I want to go a little further.
Yes.
PAM in opposition at that time was a vibrant force, although, I mean, we faced opposition. The very first meeting, we applied to have the meeting at the Warner Park. All political meetings then were held at Warner Park, even the parties that just come up, last an election and then finish. And we were denied. Australia was to come sometime in the future to have to play a cricket match here, and they said we would mash up the pitch.
Oh dear.
So we were denied, and people were starting to agitate, and we must go out there and demonstrate. And I remember Dr. Albert saying, "No, man, it's okay. Let's find our own place. We're going to the square, right? And we're going to make that ours, our home." We went to the square that night and had the first night and had a public meeting. Right? Man, it was like old mass. I can remember, that some young people remember Mr. Parry was there, the late Sir Tapley was there. They're schoolboys, teenagers, but they were there. Right? And the thing about that, we adopted that square. It was then Pall Mall Square.
Yes.
We hadn't changed the name. And it became the University of Pall Mall Square.
I heard that, yes.
Like Woodford Square, I think, in Trinidad.
Yes.
Right. The university. And that was a very special, always in my mind, a very special place where PAM was born. And so we turned what appeared to be an obstacle. We wanted to have the meeting, we can't have it. We turned an obstacle into an opportunity, right? And really made history with it, because that became our hallowed ground. Interestingly enough, years later, Labour never went to the square as a rule. Right?
So you own the space.
So that was ours. But years later, it was as if Mitchell Bradley said, "No, these fellas have no monopoly on the square. Right? We're going to have a meeting in the square." Right? But that led to a very interesting situation. We wanted, when he was going to the square, we wanted to have a meeting at Greenlands. And they denied us, police denied us the meetings, claiming it was too close. Right? Later,
Square and Greenlands?
yeah,
Too close?
Too close to the square. Later on in the campaign, right, we were in this, we wanted to go back to the square, right? But and Ms. Match wanted to go to Greenland. Right? No, it was given, no problem. So I remember going to the Commissioner of Police, and I raised a question to him. Tell me something. Is there a difference between the distance from Greenlands to the square than from the square to Greenlands? So that was a kind of illogicality.
Yes, yes.
His reply was, the Commissioner of Police has discretionary powers. So that gives you an idea of the kind of thing. We were pushed about so much, right? With this thing about not having a meeting within half a mile or something, right? Half a mile came from like this to this, just depending on who wanted to be where and who would they think would have the upper hand. If the wind was blowing from this side, right, they would prefer they would have the meeting on the eastern side of you so that their speakers would disturb you on the western side, right? And that one time we were pushed down to the cenotaph. The last night, our last meeting, down to the cenotaph. Another time we went up onto the industrial site, right up Pond's pasture, where the Mussendens live, because we plugged in at the Mussendens. Yes. And that was the kind of pushing around and kind of thing that you had at the elections.
But let me ask you quickly before I move on. Where did the party get funds from to mobilize people and have meetings and get equipment? And where did the funds come from in those days? You're sitting up, so this is an interesting answer.
For that kind of activity, you talk about meetings, having meetings and so on. So the funds came from the leadership of the party.
Another sacrifice.
Yeah. The normal maintenance of the party, right, was funded to some extent by the membership fees, which were small.
Yes.
But again, that's what most of the membership fees.
So by this time you had a register of members and all of that?
Oh yes.
Okay.
It's an interesting story about membership fees. Dr. Herbert, Mr. Keynes, and me, we each had our own public address system. And there was serious volunteerism. People like Ralph Gums, Colin Pereira, Michael Morton, and like Michael handed it down to his brother Curtis years later. Right? These persons took care of the speakers and all that kind of thing. Right? So, but the membership fees, I think one time membership fee was $1 or something like that. I remember when it went to $5, that was a big increase. Right? I don't know if any of the others can remember what the membership fee was in their time. You know. But the membership fees took care of the electricity and the utilities and so on. Right? And there was people in the community, right, who wanted to see the party grow, who made contributions. Like now, when we had fundraisers, right? It's just, I think the same thing happens now. I mean, the people contribute this, contribute that, so as to go. And more than any other arm of the party, the women's group, that was like their main function. Right? When we were thrown out of Church Street and decided to find our own building, it was the women's group who really took on the task of raising money to pay for PAM, our new headquarters. Right? I can't remember how many years it took, but they kept at it, and finally it was paid off. Right? And the women's group has always been at the heart of the general fundraising.
I am not surprised. Women seem to be a lot more participatory in politics.
People like Sturge and so on, right? And you only had to call and like that, and they're right there, right? You had people from other areas of the country, right? And some of the young people like, I think, Hardis and Selwyn, and we had a fellow living in Market Street. We call him Second Man, Michael Morton, right? Michael went jail when the leadership of PAM was taken up. Right? So even the young people that couldn't vote, but they were vibrant. Right? I want to tell you something what Dr. Herbert said about this. Very much on this question. When the history of this beautiful twin island nation is written, it will record the birth and growth of a political party that was effective in opposition, skillful in government, and whose supporters preferred country above self.
That is deep.
Right?
That is deep. I just want to piggyback a little bit off of something you just said by extracting a quotation that Dr. Richards made in this book on the 50th anniversary of the party, when he said, if anyone asks, why has the party been successful? The 4 reasons I would advance are the women, the youth, an unselfish desire to advance the social status of our people, and a strong and visionary leadership. So like you, Dr. Richards, and I'm sure Mr. Grant shares the view of the powerful contribution that the women in political parties make. So maybe I should ask Mr. Grant and Dr. Richards as well, if that level of support was still as strong in your time as political leader from women as Sir Ken just recounted.
I certainly would say that it was still as strong, and I can point to a number of events in which basically the women's arm of the party took responsibility for. We have the annual Independence Ball, organized every single year by the women's arm of the party. That particular event actually is noted for being the biggest fundraiser held by the party each and every year. Also on the party's calendar every year is the May activities. Again, the women's group take the leadership role in particular in organizing the breakfast which is held on that day. The tickets are normally sold out. I can take it a bit more personal in terms of my own constituency and canvassing. When I look at my canvassing team in the different polling divisions, they are mainly driven by women, led by women. As a matter of fact, the last election that I would have contested back in 2022, my campaign manager was a female. We have the gala, which is coming up on a Saturday evening. And again, you have women primarily involved in ensuring that that gala is a success. I was told just 2 days ago that the tickets are actually sold out for that event. It therefore points to the fact, everything that I've said points to the fact that women in particular have been a strong source of encouragement, motivation, involvement in the People's Action Movement and driving the party forward. The last thing I will say on that particular issue is that it is therefore not difficult for one to imagine that the first female candidate ever to contest an election in the history of St. Kitts and Nevis was under the banner of the People's Action Movement, and the first female ever to be elected to Parliament was also under the banner of the People's Action Movement, which led to the formation of the Ministry of Women's Affairs for the very first time in the history of St. Kitts and Nevis.
Well said. And Mr. Grant, I'm sure you want to weigh in on this whole impetus of women literally carrying the party, and sometimes, just supporting you, and they in the background and the foreground. Although we have not been very brave in the past and statistically to step up to become candidates. I'm sure that was your experience as well as political leader.
Well, I don't believe I can add anything, because I think Sean has eloquently said, because in fact, while he was talking, I was jotting down what I would say. He said exactly everything I said, down to the gala. But I just want to cement what he said, and to say that without the women's group, the finances of the party would be in shambles. They are the backbone of the finances of the party. They are the backbone of the organization of the party. And so we have to give full kudos to the women of yesteryear, which is in Sir Ken's time, the women of my time and Sean's time, and I'm certain now the women going forward. are really the ones who are solidifying the party and making sure that, we stay true to what we have to accomplish.
I would add one thing there, and that is the fact that the party is also now headed by a woman in the person of Natasha Shani.
We have come full circle.
59 years hence.
Yes, we have come full circle.
So Ken, you wanted to say something on the same point?
No,
Oh, okay.
no, I think
because it's been well said. Yes, it has been. So I want to, we only have a short window to talk, and really we could probably be here for like another week talking about this history of this party. I mean, it has not been an easy road, and especially in opposition. But the 15 years spent in opposition perhaps gave you a sort of sharp preparation for government. So it's 1979, and we are getting closer to government because you won that, was it a by-election?
The by-election.
In number 2. So, the years have passed, you've stuck with it, you're carrying on. Tell us about what happened in 1979, because that story for me was very interesting.
Well, as Shakespeare says, that there's a tide in the affairs of men which take not the flood, leads on to fortune. Right? Nobody, rejoices over the death of another individual, because apart from the ones who've gone, there's family, there's friends, and so on, those people who will hurt, and all of us can face that.
Right.
But nature took its course, and a seat in Central Bastille became available. The party took a decision. It didn't just happen by then. I was the candidate in East Bastille, and truthfully, I loved my constituency. I lived there, or born there, and I live in there again. So I was at ease there. But the party decided if there's one seat, then the leader must contest it. Right? Because the leader ought to have a seat.
And maybe a winnable
but that
seat
is,
too.
so that was just decided. The party decided, look, you got to move, you got to go. Of course, we had to, what we did, we mobilized from all the constituencies people to help in different areas. Right? So we could put all our resources, in a sense, into that one seat. And I think that caused a miscalculation by Labour, because the actual result was so tight. They came away with a victory, I think, by 12 or 20 or 20 votes, something like that. They claim. But, of course, there was 100 rejects and so on, and we felt that those votes were good votes for us, and that, in fact, we had won the election. Right? Well, a situation like that was tailor-made for Dr. Howard. Right? That was right up his alley. Right? And I know he would not, like a dog fighting with a bone, he was not going to let that go until the last effort had been made. And that is history. So it was overturned in the court, and it was decided that I won. Interestingly enough, that first court decision came on the same day as the revolution.
Archbishop.
Oh, 19th October 1983.
Yeah, all right, right. That's when that decision came. Right? And, that galvanized us. That really did galvanize us. Because the period before 79, between 75 and 79, party was crushed, man. We were on such a high. After 71, we did well. We had 71, we had the sweep out.
Brushy for brush.
We had one in Bastille, one in Sandy Point. Young people were really, really on a high with that. But then, when it came down to they could not vote. So all that young people following we had was just, in a sense, window dressing.
Yes.
But this one seat, and because Mr. Moore decided he's not going to have any meeting in the house, if someone's want house, he must get house. He said, build house, and all that sort of thing. And he figured that if he called a general election, that without having any meeting in the house, call the general election, then because our resources would be stretched to contest the general election, it followed that he would win because Labour accustomed to winning, they just win routinely. That was the approach. I don't think they envisaged the possibility of losing back in those days, at that time. Right? But that particular decision, right, turned things very much in our favor. I mean, if we had time, I could tell some interesting, what I consider interesting stories about that period.
Give us a few anecdotally.
Well, that night of the election, back then, I had run so many elections that when election night days finish, I go sleep.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Do you do that, Mr.
No,
Grant?
I can't
You
sleep.
do that, Dr. Richard?
No, I can't.
I take my radio, put it there, I have a little notebook, right? And I said, while I'm awake, I jot things in the notebook. I think I have one somewhere about the place still. And so if you look at that notebook, that gives you the history of what happened that night. Right? And I can't sleep. There's nothing more to do. I can't put in the next vote. And then when I wake up, I will find out what happened. So I did that, usually all those elections before. But 79, because it was just one seat and we expected a reasonably quick count, right? My colleagues decided that I'm not going to do that. You're not going anywhere to sleep. Right? But that night in 1980, I was asleep. And I didn't hear all the hullabaloo going on in Bastille and so on. And we had been given instructions in our strategy meetings, instructions that on election night, each candidate was assigned to be at a different location. And we were warned to stay inside, don't get caught up in whatever is going on outside. Well, when the results came, I was asleep, and Dr. Herbert and Mr. Ivan Buchanan came beating down the door. Wake up, wake up. So I got up, and I opened for them, and they said, we win, we win. And I said, so he's still to sleep. They said, we win, we got 3 seats. That waked me up. I said, what damn 3 seats you telling me about? We expected to win 4 seats. Well, who lose? Sandy Point was Somerset.
Dr. Somerset.
Yeah, Dr. Somerset. But at that point in time, we felt certain that we had this thing. And when they come telling me about 3 seats, I said, no, man. No, who lose? However, Dr. Herbert said, he said, come, get ready, we got Colin down the bay with the barracuda, with the boat, ready to go. And Sim and I, when they are over in Sim's office in Nevis, and they're ready to talk. So I drag on my clothes and we go on down to the bay. We could not come to Bastille. You could hear the music and everything kicking at us. So from where I was, we took a roundabout route up to Shadwell and came down by this through the village and come down by the cenotaph and went along the bay. Well, later on, we understood that one of our candidates nearly got shot that night because he didn't stay home, right? And got caught up with the crowd. There was apparently this crowd started to come down Church Street in the middle of the night. We usually morning went, right? And found this one candidate amongst them, lift him up high, right? Going down Church Street. A young policeman guarding out front got nervous about this crowd coming down and drew his weapon.
My goodness.
Right? and he fired high. So all the other people who were carrying, there was no problem with them. But by firing high in the general direction, I am told, I don't know if it's true, that the candidate felt the breeze.
Of the bullets?
But with the sound of the gunshot, candidate was dropped
Oh my goodness.
immediately, and that kind of cooled down the thing and dispersed the situation. By this time, we don't go on Nevis, left go on Nevis. Well, we had the discussions about who would get what and what will happen. And we found we could come to an accommodation. Mr. Daniel had a particular problem, because his manifesto was one sentence: secession for Nevis at all costs.
Oh,
you see, people need to remember the state of our country at that point in time. They had won the election, a clear mandate, secession for Nevis at all costs. But, wise man that he was, he saw an opportunity, the Shakespeare quote, opportunity. And what was the opportunity? Here it was, he was fighting Labour and fighting against St. Kitts all these years, right? Just as Anguilla had been. And all of a sudden, you don't have to carry that fight. An opportunity is being presented for you, right? To try to achieve all the things that you feel or that you have led people or Nevis or agreed with people in Nevis that they should expect from you as a leader. And it was a wonderful opportunity, and he had the wisdom to see it. And when he communicated, they communicated with some of their supporters who were not going to be in the meeting. And they were sort of given the go-ahead. So we had that meeting, we agreed on what was to be done. We called the governor at the time, right? In the wee hours of the morning, we called Government House. He was awake, it seemed, because somebody answered promptly and we spoke that and let him know we were coming. We were coming. It's funny that right now, Nevis is, and the whole state would be mourning the passing of Lady Daniel.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Lady Daniel was at that time in St. Kitts, in hospital, awaiting to have a baby. That baby is now lawyer Adrian Daniel.
Okay.
So when we all settled everything and we're now going to get back to get on the boat to come back, word came, right? Mr. Daniel got to come right away. And I got to come right away because I'm the anesthesiologist at the hospital.
Okay.
So we had to
The two of you went in the same direction?
We had to defer in swearing in, right, until after that business had been taken care of. You know, in those days, the swearing in the cabinet, everything took place pretty well straight away, the same day. Right? So, but what that opportunity did for St. Kitts and Nevis, it prevented us from being torn apart. And Will had gone, and we were on it would have happened. We were on the verge of falling apart, breaking apart. Right? But the formation of that coalition and the decision that was taken between PAM and NLP at that time prevented the breakup and the collapse of this country. And I venture to say that PAM, we talk about PAM and its contribution now. PAM totally changed the landscape of St. Kitts and Nevis.
Without a doubt.
And if you think about it, when PAM got the opportunity to be in government, every major development which affected the economic development, the growth, the financial stability of this country was made by PAM. And it is, the very things that PAM put in place, right, at that time are what supported subsequent labor administrations.
Without a doubt.
Every administration that has followed has had to depend. The one that followed immediately, right, depended on our CBI program, right? And apparently they enjoyed the money so much that in spite of having all that money, they made us the most indebted country in the world. And subsequently, when we had, everybody except the platinum CBI, platinum passport thing, we lost that because of poor management and administration of our CBI program. I put it nicely that way.
Yes.
Right.
Well, let's swing forward a little bit because we're keeping our eyes on the clock. And if I maintain that same, line of discussion, Mr. Grant. So 2015 came, and we are now part of a government again. You and Dr. Richards. Dr. Richards as Deputy Prime Minister, you as Minister of Tourism, and all the other, huge portfolios that you were given. As Sir Ken just said, how did these foundational development, the port, the CBI, that the former PAM NRP government had put in place, made it easier for you even as a minister in 2015?
It seems as though, although we did not speak before this program, there is a meeting of the minds. Because I just wrote down some notes here as to the state of play today in the context of 60 years of PAM. And when I reflect on my notes, every single economic pillar today is predicated on PAM NRP government between 1980 and 1995. The Southeast Peninsula Road, which they said was the road to nowhere, which today is the road to everywhere.
Everywhere.
Port Zante, from its birth under Sir Ken to our improvements during our last administration. And today it's amazing. I saw a note from the Prime Minister today boasting about 4 ships. How could the 4 ships arrive? The 4 ships are able to be docked today because of the foresight of Sir Ken and our progress thereafter when we added two more boats today. The Citizenship by Investment Program, it's right at all economic pillars and drivers which are producing the economic activity today and will produce the economic activity for the next 20, 30 years and beyond. But I have one little note here. It's not an economic driver, but it's significant. And it's significant because it has provided a way out for so many of our young children over the last 30, 40 years, whatsoever. And it's the school meals program introduced by a People's Action Movement government. That goes a long way. It doesn't get the kudos, it doesn't get the hurrahs, it doesn't get the cheers, but it's such an important staple in the lives of so many of us in St. Kitts and Nevis that I must add it. It's not a great economic player, but it's significant. And so, if this is not my last note tonight, it would be, if we are truthful to ourselves, and we look at the St. Kitts where it was, St. Kitts where it is now, we would recognize that the government that plays and have played the most important role in the lives of so many of us in St. Kitts and Nevis is a government of the People's Action Movement. Cannot be denied.
I am in full and total agreement with you, Mr. Grant. However, Dr. Richards, I think there's one little thing that we fall short on as a party. We don't tell our story enough. I want you to lead off on that.
I fully agree with you, Laverne, and certainly this show this evening is doing a good job in helping to tell that particular story. However, before I go any further, as Lindsay was speaking, one other thing crossed my mind, and that is the establishment of the diplomatic relations with Taiwan in particular. Taiwan, I think, has played a significant role in terms of our development, and it basically goes across every single sector of development in St. Kitts and Nevis. Education, sports, community development, agriculture, tourism, no matter how you look at it. And that particular relationship, again, was established under government of the People's Action Movement. In terms of telling our story, I believe that to a large extent we have allowed others to define the People's Action Movement. That is extremely unfortunate. It was just recently, I was having a conversation with someone and I said it has gotten to the extent where I think sometimes even our own members and supporters buy into that particular narrative. We have been labeled, for example, as a party for the rich. But again, if you look at what was outlined by both Sir Kennedy and Lindsay, one would recognize that in terms of the upliftment, the creation of a middle class here in St. Kitts and Nevis, it was largely due to the People's Action Movement that you have had the creation of that middle class. If you want to look at schools, meals, and some of the other social programs which were instituted by a government of the People's Action Movement, you can clearly see that PAM as a government took the opportunity to move people forward, to move people out of poverty over the 60 years. And if you look at where the party started in terms of that march about electricity and how the government then wanted to charge persons for electricity, PAM would have taken a stand, and that particular stand, I do believe, would have forced the government to retract its position. And so going forward, of course, we are charged in terms of how much we use, rather than what was being proposed then, that you would have been charged based on the square footage of the particular property that you occupy. Now, how do we correct that particular ill in terms of telling the story of the People's Action Movement? I believe that we have this particular show that we can use to do so. In the past, we would have produced some magazines. We did one for the 50th anniversary and I think one for the 25th anniversary of the party, whereby we documented the history of the party. However, there are other means by which we can do so, whether it is in terms of the constituency level and ensuring that as we have constituency meetings, for example, we take time out to tell the story of the People's Action Movement. We should be able to access certain documentaries, whether it is from the archives, from ZIZ or elsewhere, where we could show those show persons what the People's Action Movement has accomplished throughout its 60 years of existence. We are still quite fortunate to have Dr. Simmons amongst us, our only living national hero. And I do believe that every single opportunity that we get, we need to utilize him in terms of helping to tell the story from back then. Fortunately for us, he has published his autobiography.
Yes.
And I believe that if one reads that particular book, it gives a very good insight into the People's Action Movement, his own experience, and so it is for us to now build upon that. He pointed out that PAM has had a difficult time from the inception of the party right up until now, as he was speaking, and Lindsay in particular can relate to this. I remember us being arrested twice. Twice. I mean, the first time I sort of expected it, and I think the second time around was exactly 1 month from the first time. 1 month exactly. And so these are some of the things that we have had to face. Lindsay and I had to give up our U.S. citizenship. And yes, while it is that the Constitution speaks to it, of course, you had several different persons before who were elected and who held a dual citizenship. We have had cases before the court with regards to attempts to change the boundaries. I saw something this morning reminding the citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis as to what would have happened in January of 2015 when I was a member of parliament then, and I got a call to say there's a meeting of parliament, and as I was walking going up the steps, you receive a notice.
Yes.
To say there's an emergency sitting of parliament and you're going to the parliament, and here is an attempt being made to change boundaries. I tried making a presentation, the speaker shut me down, and other persons on the opposition bench then who also attempted to make a presentation were shut down immediately. And so when one looks at even our democracy and what the People's Action Movement has been able to do in terms of saving our democracy, I am of the view that we, of course, have played a fundamental role in terms of the development of St. Kitts and Nevis, and it is a story that we need to continue to tell to persons, so that all persons are aware as to what PAM has been able to achieve.
Wonderfully put, Dr. Richards, wonderfully put. We are running out of time, but with the permission of the production crew, I want to ask each of you the same question, and then I'll have Sir Ken give us some closing remarks. So the two of you entered politics at fairly young age. Mr. Grant, I know you have two sons who are probably not at the age yet when you started. Dr. Richards, I know you also have a son. Given all that you've experienced, given all that Sir Ken shared, given all the rigorous rigorous nature and combative nature and rancorous nature of our local politics, 60 years and a day after PAM was formed, would either of you encourage your sons to be in politics? Who wants to go first?
I think I can go first because it might be a little easier for me. The first thing I would say is that for me, when you enter politics, it has to be something that you want. You must feel it. And so that must drive anyone in terms of that particular decision. The reason why, though, I said the answer is easier for me is he was born in the U.S.
Okay. So it disqualifies him. He can serve in the U.S. He can serve in the U.S.
Just for me to cut in here quickly. Remember Kenrick Clifton?
Yes.
Kenrick Clifton became very active. So, as a matter of fact, some kind of
a councilman
or something in Boston, right?
Of late memory, of blessed memory.
Yeah, blessed memory.
Yes.
So,
I will answer the question this way. Round about the time when we were arrested, Sean and I, some time back, my younger son Kamal but he was young, still in school, and he arrested us, and he said, Then to the teacher at the time, he wanted to be a policeman. And the teacher asked him why. He said because he wants to lock up the Labour Party. Because the Labour Party had locked up his father. But the reality is, in our family unit, we've tried to balance, because there has to be a balance. We've tried to balance the politics with our children. Not divorcing them from it, because once you're a child of a politician, you're not divorced. You get hit from all angles. But to say to them that, look, this is your father's decision, rightly or wrongly. You have your own decision to make when the time comes. And if I were to make a calculated guess, there's some interest probably, but my wife might be angry with me if I say this, but she's trying to keep them out of the politics. Because politics is a difficult road.
It sounds so from all accounts.
It is all-encompassing, and if you're in it, and if you're really into the politics and it means something to you, it takes all your energy, emotionally, physically, and everything. And so, as Sean said, you have to want it to go into it. Today, you see people want to be in politics for different reasons. We were in the politics because we wanted to make a difference in the lives of people.
Most certainly.
And for example, I'll give you a basic example, and why volunteerism is so important, and why when we were in government, we want a photo government, photo up government. Everything you do something, you take a picture. You do nothing, you're taking a picture still. We don't do that. For example, I run a program at the Terry Williams Primary School for years now, where I provide breakfast for over 100 children every single day. I do that still.
You still do it?
Still do it to this day. How do I do it? Because I have a team of volunteers. I don't go down there serving, but they're there doing it. And I also want to commend them, because Labour want to take that too and say they're doing it. But I'm doing it still. I'm not in the politics, I'm not in the government, but it continues. And that shows you the selflessness of the People's Action Movement. Whether we're in, we're out, in between, we do things to ensure that the country as a whole, our communities, etc., are better off today than they were before. So I want to just commend my team at the Terry Williams Primary School for the work they're doing. I have not been for some time, but I know the work goes on, and they're continuing the work. So I want to thank them for that. And my final word would probably be that people voted the last election because they thought the grass was green on the other side. They realized it was just a mirage, and it's not all that it's made out to be. And they would recognize at the next general election that the Party of the People's Action Movement, we stand strong for the last 60 years. We're not going anywhere, despite our challenges. And I think we will be successful if we continue to do the work of the people.
With Sir Kennedy?
Yes, you wanted to say something before?
Yes, since you're going to end with Sir Kennedy,
Yes.
I just wanted to, on a different note, express my condolences to 3 families in Sandy Point. This afternoon, I would have attended the funeral service for Lorna Cooker. You also have the family of the young man who was a member of the St. Kitts Nevis Youth Parliament, Mr. Malachi Ferguson. His mom is also from Sandy Point, Arlene. Shirley, who is on the executive of the parties, is Anton Hardis, who we all know is his uncle. So I extend condolences also to that family, and finally to the family of Cheryl Warner. Persons would know in particular her sister, Jasmine, who is a permanent secretary, and some of the children, such as Candace Warner, Sharina Warner, and the other young men who are her children. You have other sisters, Glenda, Meredith, and the other family members. So I offer my condolences to those three families.
Thank you for that interjection. People who I know well as well, so I also join with you to do just that. In fact, Cheryl was my classmate from the days of writing on a slate up to high school. But Sir Ken, as we close now, I want to give you the last word. You have lived to see this party that you were a founding member of reach 60 years and a day. I don't know if the rest of us in this room can fully register what that means. Not being there from the beginning and only probably hearing stories being told by you and the people who were there, either orally or written in a book. But today, when you perhaps sit and reflect that PAM, with all of the difficulties, with all of the travail, and with all of the victimization that you just recounted, has survived for 60 years, what is the one thing that goes through your thoughts?
A lot of things. I have to say one thing that goes through my thoughts. But the fact that PAM has stood the test of time, and Mr. Grant made the point, PAM ain't going any place.
Amen.
Right? I mean, the country has to have leadership, political leadership, any country. And I want to start particularly to the young people, right? And to say to them, right? Before you say that, you raise the question about how you feel about others or your own family being in politics. Yes, it's an individual decision, right? But if you're going into politics in St. Kitts and Nevis, PAM has set out a blueprint. And these some things that PAM has set out from the very beginning, right, can be used to help our young people make a conscious and a decision, a conscious decision as to where they're going. Let me just read from this old document here, all right? The very first document that was put out by the People's Action Movement after the we got into politics in '65. The party was formed in '65. We had to contest an election in '66. Our manifesto was one page back then. But just soon after our executive members, Dr. Herbert and the others, were released, they used to pick them up as they come out and put them back in, right? Dr. Herbert left left the country. I was then in the Bahamas, and Mr. Keynes was out, right? And he had come there. We went to London. All these things are recounted in the book. But we met in Miami, and around the same time as convention that year. And as a matter of fact, we addressed the convention of the People's Action Movement from a hotel room in Miami over the telephone back then. And this is what we spent our time, the weekend, doing over there, writing this document. And I want to read just a couple of things about this document. We trust, this is the end of it. It was written in Miami, Florida, Sunday, January 28, 1968. We trust that those who read the pages which follow will become more firmly dedicated to seeking freedom and justice for all, regardless of class, color, creed, or political persuasion. Right? That's how. That's the policy and the philosophy with which PAM started. If you're going to go into politics, we want you to live your life according to this. Politics should not be about you, the individual. PAM has always had the mantra, the motto, people
Putting people first.
And if you take, I would like to, that's a subject. If you take the way PAM approach things and what PAM has done over the years, you can see it's all about dealing with people. When you come and you see young persons and they're now able to take their father's name and so on, you say, well, you know, it's such a big thing, but it is, because it's about people, right? When, I mean, regardless of class, color, creed, or political persuasion, right? If we had the time, I could tell you stories, right? And I want the young people to look at politics based on this kind of creed, so that when they come in, it's not what is in it for me, right? It's not how me and my family and friends, sometimes families get hurt. But it's about what we can do to make people around you better. What we can do to build the country. And whether it's improve education. And when you're doing it, you're not thinking, yes, PAM has to do it, but it has to be for the whole country, for everybody there. That's the point. Right? Let me tell you a quick story. I used to have these situations where I see people every Friday afternoon at my office, in government headquarters, and Saturday morning at my constituency office. And this Friday afternoon in my office, seeing people, and my secretary, Ms. Tyson, calls me and says, you have an interesting person out here waiting to come in. This is a lady dressed from head to toe in red, including her shoes. Right? So just to alert me. The lady came in, right? And she was pleasant, but it was as if, all right, I'm here now, and I want to get something done, and I come. Well, I read the game right away. And I offered her a seat, and she told me what her problem was. I'd like to get, my daughter would want to study medicine, and I want help from the government. I said, right now, we do not finance full medical scholarships at this point in time, right? Because in 6 years, and it's a lot. But we do have means of giving assistance otherwise. Right? I took the university booklet with the fees and so on, I kept it in my desk, and we just showed them and we discussed it. And after she had expressed what she was going to do, I said to her, I cannot offer you, I cannot help you this minute, but I am going to offer you exactly what I offered to a young man in St. Kitts, known activist of PAM. And you know who that young man was? Subsequently Dr. Charles Warner. Right? He was then studying at the time. I said, I'm going to offer you exactly what. I recommend, right, that you try and get a loan to finance the first year on your own. That shouldn't be difficult. Commercial loan. And from the second year on, we'll try. I'm sure you can get finance from the development bank. So we'll then put you on this for economic costs and so on. Give it the honor. So we'll give. So this is a strong labor person, making it plain and known, and I'm offering to do for her exactly what I did for a strong PAM activist, Dr. Charles Warner. And I said to her, when you finish here, when I'm finished, go down the corridor, straight down the corridor, and there's an office right on your left at the end. And go in there and speak to Mrs. Hector. Give her the name of the person. And I am sure that by next year, if you succeed in getting her admitted, right, Ms. Hector will call you, right, and we will get you in. You have to see me again, no, because we had a system in place. and the system didn't have a sensor to determine what political party you were. You went down, you got on that list in the order in which you came. And I told her that we have a certain amount of money allocated for the university. And as people leave, we fill in. And we keep that going over. Next year, we will assess whether we budget more, but we certainly won't budget less. Huh? Okay. And I'm saying that this is the way you have to think about politics, regardless you help people, regardless of class, color, creed, or political persuasion. That has to be the mantra. Right? And one other thing I want to say about PAM, and say, young people, PAM is the place for you if you're serious about politics, because it's not about you. It's not about you. There's yes, our policy. There's a page which says our policy. And the People's Action Movement has always stood for organized action. Hear the word? Action, rather than wishful thinking. Huh? I mean, if I had, I could give you examples where there's a problem, there's an issue, PAM going to deal with it. When Nevis had no water, we send water to Nevis. Never mind all the big economic assessment and this and that you have to get done. You want water? PAM get water, put in a boat and carry it to Nevis to help people. That is all.
Yes.
Right? That you help improve the quality of life of people. That's what we're all about. And I want
what an excellent note to end on. Helping to improve the quality of life of people. That is what PAM stands for.
That's what PAM has always from the day one.
Beginning until now. Absolutely. And so, gentlemen, all that is left for me to do now is to thank all three of you on behalf of a grateful nation. But before I wrap up, I just wanted to slip in another set of condolences for Gully of Crab Hill, who also passed away. Obviously, Dr. Richards being one of those politicians who want to make sure that somebody doesn't tell him, well, you didn't call my name or my relative's name. So he slipped this note to me to offer sympathy on his behalf for the family of Gully of Crab Hill, who also recently passed. And so on behalf of all of us at PAM, for that matter, we extend to the families of the bereaved our deepest and sincerest condolences. And as we wrap up, again, I want to thank you, three gentlemen. You wanted to say something?
Since you all giving condolences for people from Sandy Point, I have one from Central Bass here to put in. It's still, the family of late Delia John.
Okay, yes.
Right?
Yes.
The widow of the former Deputy Governor General
yes.
for Nevis.
So, yeah.
Right? I would like us to extend deepest condolences to our family and our prayers. Let them know that our thoughts and prayers are with them.
Most certainly. Thank you for adding that. You see, we are all-inclusive party. So, again, I want to thank you, gentlemen, for the service that you've given to this great party called the People's Action Movement. This is not the end of the history of PAM. The history would continue. But in fact, it is the groundwork that has been laid for this party is one that has transcended time and perhaps even our own space. Because for the groundwork that has been done, for the foundational pillars that have been built, anytime a PAM government is in office, has been the springboard from which all of the economic and other development in St. Kitts have happened. And so I want to thank the three of you for your yeoman service over the years, both as public servants and as political leaders of our party. And obviously, I'm doing this now, but we have something else to give you at our gala. On Saturday night, the gala starts at 7. It is a sold-out affair. I'm going to encourage everybody who has purchased a ticket to be early, because we want to start exactly at 7 o'clock and then continue with the formality at 8 o'clock. So please don't allow yourself to be late and then miss out on any significant part of the celebration. So again, I want to ask all of you to come out to our function. Let's celebrate this party that we love so much. Let's raise a toast for PAM and its continuity. Yes, we're not in government now, but the time will soon come when we'll return to government. And so on a final note, we also want to remember the family of the baby who passed in the accident recently, Malachi Edwards. Again, you know, this is perhaps unrelated to what we're talking about, but I need on behalf of the party to say that we really, I understand that this family is, this family is you know, one of Lindsay's supporters. And so, you know, as I said, we are inclusive. But I want on that note also to, on behalf of the party, sound a note of caution to all of our drivers to please be careful. I think we have been way too many traffic accidents and traffic fatalities for a small island. And so we want to appeal to all of our drivers to be courteous and to be kind on the road as road users. Let 2025 be a year of significant reduction in traffic fatalities and traffic accidents in general. So on that note, I bid all of you a pleasant night, and we'll see you on Saturday at our Diamond Anniversary Ball. Thank you very much. God bless and goodbye.
We love to serve our country.
Means you can. I know, right?
So well. In peace and love and happiness, we will forever dwell. We ask for God's protection and guidance on our way. The People's Action Movement will strive from day to day. The People's Action Movement is here and here to stay. To serve our country.